Are those of the program host.
Government.
The opinions expressed are those of the program host and guest and are not those of WSTU. WSTU does not endorse products that may be mentioned. Any reproduction or retransmission of this broadcast is strictly prohibited without written consent of WSTU. The phone lines are open. Call in with your questions and comments at 220-9788. That's 220-WSTU. It's time for Stewart Laser Talk with your host, Dr. Tred J. Razacker.
I'm 5'10" and 242 pounds.
I always say this is the biggest I'm ever going to be, and I said that like 20 pounds ago.
A third of Americans are obese, another third is overweight.
Obesity is the biggest threat to the health, welfare, and future of this country.
I've always been overweight.
I've got diabetes.
Sleep apnea, heart disease.
Everything's hurting now.
It's a lot easier to lose weight than it is to keep weight off.
This is probably going to be the first generation of children who are going to have a shorter life expectancy than their parents.
18% of our children right now are obese.
It's not only health, it's about survival and well-being of the United States as a nation.
You don't crave broccoli, and our generation has grown up craving a Big Mac. I want to think that there's something better for me.
Unless we're able to control this epidemic, we're going to have an abundance of chronic disease.
All of us have to be part of the solution to reduce obesity.
The weight of the nation is out of control, but we can fix that.
If we don't now take this as a really urgent national priority, we are all going to pay a really serious price. Obesity will crush the United States in oblivion.
Good morning, Stuart, Florida. My name is Dr. Tread Rissacker, and I am your host for the next hour, or should I say 54 minutes, on the Slim Body Laser Spa Health and Wellness Show. And today's topic is how to avoid dying prematurely. What? Is that possible? Isn't it chance? Isn't it just by, out of my control? I don't know. I think you have a lot of control over it. So, that is so important. I can't even tell you how to not die prematurely. And I know it sounds kind of funny to say that. The heck with that. Anyway, today is a message of hope and healing. I just want you to know that. And I was only kidding when I said dying prematurely. If you don't believe in an afterlife, then you are concerned about dying, and I understand that. So, why am I here today? And I'm thank you for tuning in. I guess I do plan out these talks, and I have scripted things I like to go over and mention. And then something happens, something I see, something I watch, I observe, and I'm like, oh no, I got to change the topic today. I don't know what to say about that. And that happened. It's been happening a lot to me lately. I have to remove myself from the pipeline of fear and anxiety and stress, and just turn it off. Right? Somebody said, how do you find more peace and happiness? Turn off the TV. Turn off the all the negative stuff that flows in, all the hype. And some of it's very true, but there's not a lot you can do about a lot of things. I mean, that's just a fact. If you know that your lifespan should, be at least over 100. Hey, I was at Dunkin' Donuts yesterday, and I got my little espresso because I like my caffeine without any sugar. And there was a gentleman there with a American flag shirt on, and I'll tell you, he looked older than dust. I mean, he was old. His face had all these dark marks on it, and his arms and stuff, but he had a huge smile. And when I told him, I said, I like your shirt, his whole face just beamed with a big smile. And his daughter was there with him, and she says, do you know my dad is 97 years old? And I'm like, 97? Good for you. He says, yeah. And so I started talking to him a little bit because, I'm in the Dunkin' Donuts there walking out with my espresso. And a very interesting guy, he was in World War II, and he was in the Merchant Marine, where basically he was on fleet of an oiler. Now, an oiler would be a big ship that services the aircraft carriers and the battleships. In other words, it's a floating gas station. Okay. There's no other reason to have it other than to bring fuel out. And he traveled back and forth in World War II in the Atlantic Ocean during the U-boats. And, and he was somebody who had a very, very good grip on life. You could just tell that he's a smart guy, And I told him about my dad's experience in World War II when he was on the USS Boxer, which is an aircraft carrier. And he got in at the end of World War II, so he didn't have to see that much combat. It was more like he's crew. And but it's the fact is that this generation, they're leaving us. They're gone. They're going away. This man was 97. My dad would be almost 100 right now if he were still alive. And he was young when he was in World War II at 19 years old at the end of it. So those memories, that patriotism, that desire, that going out into the oceans and going across into Europe and doing the things that they did to defeat this fascism and what was happening in World War II, where Germany was moving in and taking over all these countries. And, I don't have to tell you about it. Hopefully you remember it, but a lot of you don't. And our whole country mobilized to protect those people from that invasion, and it gave us a lot of pride and a lot of I don't say happiness. A lot of people died, and it was a terrible thing. However, it brought everybody together as a shining example on the hill of freedom and happiness and doing the right thing. So, we had a good. I'm 63. I was born in 1960. My dad, I was one of the baby boomers. When people came back from World War II and they were trying to stimulate the economy to get things going. Remember, you had the Depression after that. In World War II, people started, they gave them houses and they gave them a certain amount of money to become either, for college. And my father, he took the money for education, and that's why he became a chiropractor. He was back when he got out of World War II, before he went into World War II, he was a young, as he put it, punk living in New York, in Long Island. He wasn't a punk. He was just a young kid, living his life. And he was, making tree forts. And I lived in Valley Stream, New York. And he made, he said the river, that the stream that came through Valley Stream through the park, he said was filled with trout, fish. And they used to fish for trout there. And what happened is he decided it was when he was 12 years old, he fell out of a tree. He was climbing one of his tree forts, and he fell out of a tree and kind of landed on his neck, landed on the side of his shoulder, as he put it, and developed a severe stiff neck and some, problems with his his ability to control movements, tics and twitches. And he would, his muscles he would be almost like spasmodic on one side of his body. And this was after the fall. And they took him to the medical doctors in New York at the time. And, of course they x-rayed and they looked for any fractures, and there was none. And they diagnosed him with what they called St. Vitus dance. Now, if you're over 60, you might know what that means. It was really Huntington's disease is what they call it today. And St. Vitus was a saint who did all these crazy movements. He was looked like he was dancing. And that's how they named the condition that my father was diagnosed with at 12 years old, St. Vitus dance. And the prognosis was horrible. They basically told my grandmother by the time he would be in his late teens to early 20s, this St. Vitus, this disease, this progressive neurological disorder, which was initiated by the fall. That's what they told her. And that he would be on an iron lung to breathe when he would be in his 20s. So without a lot of other options, without a lot of other places to go, you accepted the diagnosis. And they medicated him when he was 14 and 15 years old, when the tics and the spasms would get bad. He had a lot of problems with it because, they felt that he should be able to control it. But, like be calm. And they just didn't understand what was going on. So he's at the park. He's 15, 16 years old at this point. And a woman comes up and asks his mother, my grandmother, why is your son making those movements? It doesn't looks like he hurt, something was up. And my grandmother told him the story. And she said, have you ever tried a chiropractor? Now, that line, that statement, that suggestion is why I'm here today. Okay. 60, 70 years later, I am going to ask you this exact question. Have you ever tried a chiropractor? Okay. That's what was given to my dad's mother in 1936, approximately. And she said, a cracker? Well, what? and the woman said, I don't know much about it. She says, but it has something to do with the bones in the neck. And it's possible that fall could have disrupted that alignment somehow, and that could create some of these problems. I mean, wow. 1936, babe. She took my grandmother, who was open-minded and was looking for help, just like many of you out there are looking for help right now. You're sick. And the medical profession, the one idea that you've been given, that you've bought into, that you've been sold on, is it's giving you a permanent diagnosis, which leads to permanent medication, which leads to eventually loss of, you hope you have a quality of life, but it's hard to have a quality of life when you're living on meds. What if you run out of your meds, or you can have the money to buy the meds? You're in trouble. And my grandmother was her only son, and she just had an open mind, and somebody, maybe God came in and talked to her and said, go find out. Just go check it out. And she got the address, and this chiropractor was outside of Manhattan, right out in the island there. And she took them to this chiropractor, and basically history exam, but they took an x-ray of my dad's neck, different than the one they took from the medical doctor, by the way. This was looking at the alignment, his overall relationship between his skull, which is the base of the brain, C1, which is called the atlas, C2, which is called the second cervical, and then you have 3, 4, 5, all the way down to the tailbone. And what happened was, on the x-ray, my father, he remembered this, by the way, because became a chiropractor. He said, when you saw that x-ray and you could see that bone had shifted to the right side and it was high on the side, it's exactly where it hurt when he felt it. And when he would turn his neck into that position, the spasms would become much worse. And they were giving him sedatives, barbiturates to stop the spasms, which is, they still do it today. And he told my grandmother, the doctor told my grandmother, I think we can correct this. He's only going to need one adjustment, one correction, and let's see how it works. Laid my dad on his side, got on the side the way that the bone had slipped out. The guy made a contact with his palm of his hand, the knife edge of his hand, and made an adjustment. Pop, pushed it back into place. And do you know what? My dad never had another spasm or tic again from that problem. Never. It corrected the cause of his symptomatology. It didn't cure St. Vitus dance, because he didn't have St. Vitus dance. He had a bone out of alignment in his neck, which was creating symptomatology, an obvious findings that you could measure and look at and measure with reflexes, and that became the diagnostic criteria for the treatment that was given to him, which was drugs, to stop the symptom, to stop the spasm, to stop the tic, without really going into why it happened. And that's really important to know that, because, I always say this. If your problem is alignment, like if your back goes out of alignment, that bone shifts and it puts pressure on your spinal cord, and the disc is bulging and it's creating, neuropathy and numbness in your leg or your foot, or spasms. Remember, there's also nerves that control your digestive system, your stomach, your colon, your bladder, your pancreas, your liver, your ability to swallow. It all travels through your spinal column. And those little insults, or it could be from a fall out of a tree like my dad, or it could be a car accident that you didn't see coming and you had your head turned to the right. If that's the cause of why you're having the symptomatology you're experiencing, medicine will not work for you. It'll treat the pain like an aspirin, like a drug, but it will never, ever, ever correct the true cause of that problem, which began from the fall, from the insult, from the injury that knocked your spine out of alignment. And this is the truth. I like to say truth central here. I'm going to tell you the truth. So this is something that I learned a long time ago, and I thought everybody went to chiropractors. I didn't know that people took all these drugs and all these shots. I was never given any of that stuff. My father believed in what they call the vitalistic approach to health. In other words, let's do things to make sure that my children have the right nutrition, the right clean water, clean food, the right amount of sleep, a safe environment for education, where you're not being hurt or hurt by other people. That, he believed in family values, and keeping stress to a minimum. In other words, not giving anxiety and fear and, ruling the world like a hammer fist, ruling the children and the family. And this environment, which was very nurturing and healing for us, we're all very, very healthy children of his. My only problem I've ever had is through my own choices and my own decisions to not back off from eating food. I got fat. I did. I don't have any obesity in my family. There's not a fat person I had seen some pictures of my mother's father who was obese, but it's not something really, you don't inherit the obesity gene. I mean, they would love to say it's all genetic, but just like my father, he ended up having vascular problems from his cigarette smoking, which, ended his life a fairly, not super short, but he was only 78. To me, that's young. And if you were to look at me and my dad, I'm a carbon copy of my father. I mean, alignment, muscular height, he's my dad. And they told me that I would be a huge candidate for this heart disease and having the problems he has. And I looked at him and said, yeah, but you forgot one thing. I don't smoke. I'm not a cigarette smoker. He loved cigarettes, by the way. Had a love affair with cigarettes. I mean, from when he was a young, cool guy with the cigarettes rolled up in his upper shirt on the right side. He had the cigarette pack in there like a bad boy, to, I mean, he liked Raleigh cigarettes. They don't even have them anymore. I don't even know where they make them, but Raleigh's had these coupons you could get. And if you smoked enough cigarettes and had enough coupons that came in the little packs, you could then get a jacket or a cooler or something. That's how they got people to smoke cigarettes. And so he had the Raleigh jacket. And so genetically, we are very identical. However, genetics isn't the only predictor of whether or not you're going to get sick or not. There's a lot of other factors that have to do with things you can control. That if you can control your environment, lessening poisons, exercising, getting enough sleep, keeping low stress levels, the chances are that genetic tendency will be buried by the good habits that you do, which is why I'm 63, and my dad had his first heart attack when he was in his 50s. He had a triple bypass when he was like 54. I'm 63, and when you look at my heart scans and all of my blood vessels, I don't have any serious disease more than somebody who would be in their 60s or 70s. I'm sorry, lower than my age, in their 50s, even though I'm 63. So your choices that you make every day, what you're going to put in your body, food, whether or not you're going to exercise and move around enough, whether you're going to maintain a clean environment, outside of your body. You're going to live in filth and squalor and dirt and bacteria, ridden things. Do you not shower? Do you not change your sheets but once every week or two? These are filth. And also, we call it sanitation, cleanliness. And then are you somebody who is also putting filth and poisons into your body, which I did for several years? Led me to the problems I have today, by the way. I was living for the moment, not realizing someday, I'm going to be older and maybe I wish I'd taken better care of myself. You've heard that old saying. Well, it's true. If I'd known I was going to live this long, I would have taken better care of myself. And so genetics do play a role in sickness and disease and health. There's no doubt about it. Everybody knows. That's why they do health histories, diabetes, things like that. But they don't have as much impact as you really would think if you make other changes. You can offset the risks by being healthier in many ways. Okay? So that's a fact. All right. So with that said, yes, if you're interested in a chiropractic consultation, I can hook you up. Yes, I'm a chiropractor, but you know what? I've got an older brother that's a chiropractor, a sister right immediately underneath me who's a wonderful chiropractor, and I have a baby sister that's a chiropractor. And my brother and sister, Dr. Todd Rissacker and Dr. Caroline Rissacker, they practice in Jensen Beach, right across the street from the Treasure Coast Square Mall. And that's in the plaza where I want to say the Bonefish Grill. That was where I was at. They're in the plaza where the Makita Buffet is, and they have the Burlington Coat Factory, and they have the Wild Wings and the Sonic. That plaza is where their office is located, and they share space. So phone number is 772-692-7899, and it's called A Better Life Chiropractic Center. You can also call my office, Dr. Tread's Slim Body Laser Spa, 772-223-5885, or you can go online, hit the contact, say, hey, I'd like a referral to your brother and sister in Jensen Beach. They accept most insurance that pays for chiropractic, Blue Cross Blue Shield, Medicare, HMOs, a lot of PPOs. I know that it's important to a lot of you out there that if you have insurance, you can use it. And they do that kind of care. They have very valuable hours. They begin at 9, which I think they should begin at 8, but they start from 9 to 1, and then they come back again from 3 to 6, Monday, Wednesday, and Fridays. And they also work Tuesday afternoon. They're off Thursday, and they have half a day on Saturday. Now they have x-ray equipment there. They have the tables necessary to handle someone that's in a lot of pain. Some people have a hard time laying down when their back goes out, they don't want to be moved, and they can treat it. And the other thing that they have a specialty in, which I've been doing for many years myself, is they're using lasers to help people to heal faster. Laser therapy to reduce pain, to reduce inflammation, and to help you heal faster. That's the benefit of low-level laser and deep tissue laser therapy. Now, for some of you out there, you maybe have never heard of laser therapy. Before 2009, 15 years ago, I had never heard of laser therapy. I didn't even know that chiropractors were licensed to use lasers. And so I think it's my responsibility to tell you a little bit about what type of lasers we use, why it can be so beneficial, and how, it's taking over pain management and what somebody does when they have a sports injury or they have a chronic recurring injury or they're left with nerve damage from something like neuropathy or somebody who is suffering with dementia and cognitive decline. Yes, they're using lasers to help with that. Okay. And of course, my specialty, which I've perfected, is using lasers to get rid of stubborn fat without diet and without any exercise. Think about that. Right? This is not Oprah Winfrey's protocol. This is not a GLP-1 god awful medication for today that works, but tomorrow will probably be taken off like all the other meds for weight loss. Because if you lose weight without eating better and without exercising and without dieting, without putting in a whole nother package to it, you are not a healthy person just because you lost some weight on the scale. Okay. And that's because true health is not how much you weigh, it's how much muscle you have compared to lean mass, how much muscle you have compared to lean mass. In other words, how much of your body is muscle and how much is fat. That's the true predictor of health and wellness and longevity and low medication, not needing meds and living better is the ratio between the two. And guess what? You cannot determine that ratio without help, without using a machine or doing it using something called a body impedance analysis or a DECA scan, which is made by GE. It's like a scan, like an MRI that you lay in. It's a full body DECA scan, they call it. Or maybe it's even skin caliper measurements where you pinch the folds of your skin to determine how much subcutaneous fat you have. And then there's something called the VO2 max, strenuous exercise for a certain amount of time. And then they measure how much CO2 you put out. Now, those tests are very expensive. I mean, thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars. But there is an easy test that you can do very easily. And these are these scales that you see people stand on. They take their shoes off and they stand on it, and it has a current which passes through your body, very mild current. And then it tells you how much body fat you have and how much stored, how much you have as far as lean and muscle mass, your resting caloric intake, and how hydrated you are. And there's also machines that they suck. Shouldn't use that word. They're not that good. And they have a lot of unreliability and they give you false answers. And one of them that's been very, not very accurate are all of these portable devices that we wear, the Fitbits and these watches and these things which tell you your body fat. For one thing, they say you walk 3,000 steps, but it's only by how the thing was shook. And then when it comes to measuring your body fat your body fat percentages, there's no current. It doesn't rely. I don't know how they can calculate it. But when people come in and they show me that my body fat shows them 25%, and then I put them on my body impedance analysis machine, which I do at the spa, their body fat's 35, 38%. My God, you're almost half your body's fat. Yeah, but my watch says it's only a little over 25%. Well, get another watch because that thing's wrong. And if you're relying on that and you're not feeling well and you're on medication, then you're a fool. Now, someone who's not on any meds, they haven't reached 40 yet, ignore anything I'm telling you here because this doesn't apply to you. If you're got too much body fat and you're miserable, it's probably because you're eating too much, you're not exercising enough, and you're not in a good environment or a good situation where you can be happy. Yet, if you're over 50 and you're getting weight and you got a big belly and you're getting, love handles and muffin tops and bat wings and you're getting your bras bulging and, everything when you put your pants on, you're laying on your back to suck in your gut to button them up. And then when you hop up, the fat spills over and you're exercising and you go to the gym and you're doing your keto diet, trying to do keto as best you can. You might need help because your problem and your challenge is a lot more complicated than you realize. In other words, if it were easy, everybody would be doing it. And it's not easy. Now, it's easy to lose weight, but it's really hard to keep weight off. And that's the truth. So if we get back to these lasers, because that's what I originally had told you I was going to tell you about, is why are chiropractors, how does laser being used besides to cut out a tumor or to burn off a tattoo that you didn't want to get, that you were resentful, you shouldn't have gotten, they use lasers to burn that off, or maybe laser hair removal, or maybe a laser eye surgery. Okay, these are lasers. So how can they be helpful if they're cutting and burning and melting and causing fires, And it has to do with the power behind it, how much power is pushing the light. So you could take a little small flashlight that you might have in your keychain so you could see where your door lock is, right? You put that little push that button and you get a little light out. That light is a very low power. And it's not really going to harm you because it's such a low power. It's energy. It's electrons being pushed out of that bulb. Now, if you crank that power up on that light, if you start making it more powerful and then focusing it in a small spot, like a magnifying glass would do, that light becomes dangerous. It can burn. It can cut a hole in things. It'll definitely hurt your eye if you shine it in your face. It'll also, over time, create aging. It creates tissue destruction. It's why tires get cracked and broken and they wear out because of the oxidation from the sun. High energy power light is used as a weapon, right? So laser-based weapons you've seen. Maybe you've been watching on YouTube. They show these cannons now, these laser cannons. All it's pushing is this light, the same light that's in your house, the same light that comes from the sun. But it's the power behind it that makes it different. So our federal government made a decision that we would classify the use of light in different ways. Okay? So light that you would get at home is of a very low power, and it's something called diffuse. It's diffuse light. It's just a general light that puts out its rays, its energy in a circular fashion, almost like a starburst would go off when you ever look at a firework that goes up and the starburst goes off. So if I put a light bulb in the middle of this room I'm in and I turn it on, it's 100 watts. It's going to shine and the light's going to cover the whole room. It's not focused into one spot. But if I took that 100-watt light bulb and I was able to channel all the light into one beam, like one spot, the big as my thumb maybe, now that 100 watts of light is much more powerful because it's been concentrated into one spot. And, that is a fact. So what a laser does, a laser uses it takes light, it amplifies it, And then what it does is it uses a series of mirrors within the laser tube, within the tube. And when the light goes into the tube, it bounces back and forth between those mirrors. And when one little part of that light that's going back and forth between the mirrors allows it to escape from one small opening, so you get one ray or one beam of straight light, because light is like it's a straight line. And that is called coherent light, meaning the light beams travel next to each other and they don't touch. They're not mixing together, which would be non-coherent. So, that's how a laser works. You put the light into this tube. The tube has two mirrors in it. And when the light hits the one mirror, it bounces to the other mirror, and then it gets bouncing back and forth very fast, which you could imagine happening within that tube. And then there's a little slit on the side of that tube, which lets a little bit of light come out. And it's just like, it's very thin. So it's only a beam, like a sharp beam. And that is then channeled into a handpiece that you hold through a series of fiber optic cables, because light travels through these fiber optic cables. And then the output is a single beam of light. Now, that's how a laser works. Now, the color of a light, the wavelength is called color: red, green, blue, purple, infrared, near infrared, far infrared, UVA, UVB. These light wavelengths are what you see when you look at a prism that's held up into the light. You know what a prism is? It's that glass piece that looks like a triangle, and you hold it up into the light, and it takes the light from the sun and it separates it into the different colors. The blue and the purple and the yellow and the red, understand that? Those are the wavelengths. Now, each one of those colors has a different effect on your body. It has a different effect. And that's because the wavelength is either a short wavelength or a long wavelength. And long wavelengths penetrate deeper into tissue than short wavelengths. So a long wavelength is going to be safer to apply to a person's body because it's not going to create as much heat. The short wavelength creates a lot of heat. So if we take this analogy to the sun, when you get up in the morning and it's been dark all night, right? The sun starts to come up on the horizon. Those wavelengths, red and yellow, are long wavelengths, and they don't cause a lot of heat, which is why you can sit out there and you can look at the sun when it first comes up. You see it coming up. And those wavelengths produce something called near infrared wavelengths at the yellows and the reds. And those wavelengths, since they're long wavelengths, they penetrate much deeper into your body. In fact, near infrared wavelengths travel through your whole body, in the front and out the back. And they've measured it. You can see it on cameras. And just like, have you ever been in your car driving and that somebody shows up and pulls up to the light with one of them rap cars, or they got the music up really loud, and it's boom, 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 boom. You hear that bouncing, the bass. You can hear the bass 15, 20 cars away. That's because bass energy is a long wavelength, and it penetrates through all the cars around you and near you. A higher wavelength, the tweet, is a very short wavelength, and it doesn't penetrate as far, which is why you can hear somebody's stereo when you're at home and they drive by on the road, half a mile away. You can hear it. It's wavelengths. So you're getting a little understanding here. We're dealing with primordial energy from the sun, and those different colors are called wavelengths. And the sun, depending on where it's at, whether it's first coming up, if it's at the edge of our planet, we're circling around the sun, and depending on whether it's high sun or low in the evening or in the day, we're getting different beneficial effects from that light. So it's not a demon. It's not the cooking device, which is cooking everybody. It is literally life, giving you life through light. But you need to be smart. Just like you wouldn't stand in front of the train light and think it's not going to hurt you because it's super bright, and you wouldn't expect the key light on your key that you're using to look at the lock to have much benefit in getting you around in the dark. You got to use common sense. So, how am I going to get you to understand this? So, light is energy, and it's really electricity, right? That's why you can have something called a solar panel, solar voltaic cell. When light energy hits a solar voltaic cell, a certain chemical which is designed to absorb the photon of light, it transfers that light into an electrical current. And that electrical current is then stored in a battery, which we can then utilize the electricity by plugging into the battery. That sunlight hits the solar voltaic cell, transfers it into electricity. The battery stores it. And then from the storage of that battery, you can plug in your cell phone and your electrical appliances, right? Well, did you know that same mechanism is within you? Except you are the battery. You're the battery. Okay? You're the battery, which without light would have no charge. Okay, just like the battery that's not plugged into the solar panel, you unplug the panel, there's no more charge going into it, the battery doesn't do anything. Your body's the same way. But it's a biochemical battery. It's a chemical battery. It's not the same as a battery that uses lead and acid and just store charges. But your charges are stored within your cells in something called mitochondria. Now, if you're on YouTube or you're listening to these podcasts of all these healthy podcasts, there's a lot of really great ones out there, you're probably starting to hear about something called a mitochondria. All right. Now, a mitochondria is an organelle. It's an organism like a bacteria, which is a benefit. Not all bacteria are bad, by the way. There's a lot of good ones. They're all good in certain ways. And the mitochondria, what they do is they can take light from the sun and then use that energy to form glucose, to form energy that your body utilizes as energy. So a small amount of light can go into the mitochondria because it goes through the tissue, through our skin, absorbed by the mitochondria, and we get a little energy boost from that. And that's called oxidative phosphorylation. It's part of the Krebs cycle or the citric acid cycle of how we make ATP. Now, the other way that we make energy and power our batteries is through the food we eat. But the food you're eating is only it has captured the energy from the sun in the form of starch, binding the carbohydrates, the carbohydrates, the nitrogen, and these different carbons together. And when we eat that starch from the plant, it breaks the bonds, it releases that chemical energy from the sun, which is then picked up by the mitochondria, and the mitochondria are what are giving you energy and keeping you alive. You have so many mitochondria in your body that it's probably one of the most prolific organelle cells within the body, because you might have 30 trillion cells, but within each cell, if it's a muscle cell or if it's the retina where you need a lot of energy, the mitochondria are going to be 100 million within that cell. And for that reason, a lot of lethargy, brain fog, fatigue, lowered libido, difficulty sleeping, generalized malaise, which they're calling long COVID, is becoming, it's proven that it's a mitochondrial dysfunction, that the mitochondria are not getting enough energy and they are failing to be able to power your body. Now, your mitochondria, which are these batteries within your cell, give you the electricity and store the electricity that comes from the sun, which is eaten by the plant. Some of it also comes in through our skin. We're radiated by it, which is where we get into the use of lasers. Okay. And it's mind-blowing to me to realize how important these basic functions of how we get energy, how the tissue repairs itself, why one person can be miserable their whole life and be lethargic and tired, and another person can be full of energy. And one person lives their whole life free of disease, and another person is riddled with disease. And light exposure has been demonized by people that have to benefit from you being sick. Right? Let me repeat that. The exposure of light to your body without understanding why you're doing it, without using common sense, is being demonized. You're being told that you will die from cancer or skin cancer or radiation. The list goes on and on. Yet, just like you wouldn't stand in front of the train light and think that your body's going to be okay, and you're not going to get enough light from your little key light to light up your room, you got to use your common sense when it comes to how you apply light to your body. You need to know the rules. And safe to say, early morning, get out there, get at least 3 minutes of direct sunlight on your body, your whole body. Okay, and don't worry if you got bathing suit on, that's fine. And all you need is 3 minutes of red light when the sun first comes up in the morning, before it's 10% up above the horizon. I get 20 minutes every single day. You should also get light at the end of the day when the sun's going down, because that light dosage is also controls your circadian rhythms. It controls when you're hungry, when you're not, when you're going to heal, when you're sleepy, when you feel, amorous. It's all controlled by light, you guys. Your ancestor went to sleep and it was dark. He didn't have his cave wasn't lit with electric devices. It was dark. Maybe he had a fire. Do you know the fire is a good light to have on because it's reds and yellows? It's not bright. So early morning, late afternoon, and also the bright light, the blue light, which is when the sun is very high, is also very beneficial. But you want to limit your exposure to that because it has a lot of UVA and UVB rays, which we need. And the other thing I'm going to go into when you hear this next week is that LEDs are what are creating much of the disease that we have, that we're developing. This chronic disease is coming because we have gotten rid of the full spectrum light in our houses. We're now using LEDs, and an LED is a light which is designed to only give you certain wavelengths, and it doesn't create heat. So since it's not losing heat, you're saving energy. But we have now found out, well, we knew this, that those heat waves, that light that you get on the full spectrum is super beneficial. So get outside, breathe air, allow the infrared to go into your body, get yourself in a green space. Infrared is reflected off of leaves and plants. It's not something, so you will live longer, you will feel better. And at the same time, if you're struggling with stubborn body fat, you'd like to get rid of it easily and quickly, that's what we do at the Slim Body Laser Spa. My name is Dr. Tred Rissacker. I'm located on East Ocean Boulevard, 2311 Southeast Ocean Boulevard. Go online, check it out. Let me know what you think. I thank you so much for tuning in, and please share this with other people. Have a great day. Bye-bye.